This is for every kid in this country who feels different, who gets stuck. And it's our responsibility to reach out and help those children transition safely into adulthood.
So together through our local initiatives, we've raised approximately $5,000 for Push for Change. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Joe Roberts. He's made a huge impact on how I think about things and a lot of OPP officers, and I know he will on you. Okay, so Joe Roberts.
Walking across Canada, you don't get to choose your weather, but the one thing that I'm really conscious of right now is that even though it's a snow day, it doesn't change the fact that 39 events happened over the last few months. It doesn't change the fact that we engage with the young people, that we've engaged with the city leadership, we've engaged with our law enforcement, we've engaged with our educators, our healthcare professionals, and our frontline service providers. You guys deserve an absolute huge round of applause. It really is fantastic. You guys blew the doors and you really raised the bar. Yeah. Snow days and tough weather is part of walking across Canada to raise awareness for a cause. Why do we want to raise awareness? Why do we want to raise the profile of youth homelessness? Because it's something that's rather hidden, it's something that's invisible, it's something that we think may not entirely exist in our community. And part of the Push for Change is to tell a story, a lived experience, and point to some of the pieces that we may not quite understand. And then when we do that, then we can begin to sort of step back and ask the question, what can we do, each of us, in our own push for change, contribute to creating a better society and a better world to protect young people in this country? And that's really what the conversation's all about. I'm a small town kid. I came from Midland, Ontario. I remember I used to come up here in Cottage when I was a kid and swim in Lake Couchiching. And I grew up, I spent 9 years in Midland, and then I spent another 10 years or so up in Barrie. And if you would have thought that a guy like me would have ended up in the streets of Vancouver, a small town kid ending up pushing a shopping cart in the streets of Vancouver, that would really make you think, how does that happen? And that's exactly why we're pushing for change. You see, I grew up in Midland, and for the first 9 years of my life, everything was fantastic. It was I had a normal childhood. I had a dad who was a great guy, he was fantastic, really supportive. You know, I remember going on vacations to Nova Scotia. My mom liked PEI in Nova Scotia. We went there for a couple of summers, and I remember going up and boating up in Bosley Island, and life was pretty good. I remember as a young boy I went to Monsignor Castigs, and I used to watch the clock on the wall. And I couldn't wait when it was like 3:10 and 3:15 and 3:20. I couldn't wait for it to be 3:30 and I got to go home. Because I loved being at home. Home was excellent. It was fun. I came from a part Scottish, part Irish family, and everyone was really gregarious, and the house would fill up with people. I had a tree fort in the backyard and a little BMX bike. And things were excellent. And my father was a great man. But life took him from us very young. My dad was 35 years old when he passed away. And just like that, our family dynamic changed. And paparazzi. Yeah, man. Didn't know we were co-sharing the stage. Yeah, I do. Dad was a kind of guy who used to say things to me like, I love you, you can be anything, you can do anything. Dad was really supportive. And I was in elementary school about a month ago, and I had grade 4s and grade 5s, just little itty bitty ones. And the cool thing about little itty bitty kids is they're real honest, eh? And I asked them, I said, you guys ever feel like you're not good enough? And and every one of their little hands went up, or at least 90%. Okay? See, we all have those feelings of not being good enough sometimes. And whether that turns into something big in our life or not depends on what's really going on at home. It depends on how strong our mom and dad or our caregivers are. For when we have those challenges and those icky feelings, that help us sort through that stuff. Allow us to make a mistake or two, but help move us down the line towards becoming the people that we're supposed to be. But not all children have that luxury and have those really good people around them. And that was kind of my case. My dad died young, and all of a sudden now it's just me and my mom and my brother and my sister. And we went from being a middle-class family to being lower income because Mom didn't have a full-time job. She had a part-time job, and Dad was the breadwinner of the family. And so what happened next is my stepfather came into the picture. And my stepdad wasn't like my father at all. He wasn't a supportive man. He was violent. He was an alcoholic, and he was abusive. And so I went from a man who would say things like, "I love you, you can be anything," to a man who would say things like, "You're stupid, you're dumb." You know, we talk a lot about bullying in the last few years and get educated on how impactful that can be. I had a bully that lived inside my house. And so at a very young age, I had those feelings like I wasn't worth it, like I wasn't good enough. And if I can get any child to believe a lie about who they are, I can control some of the poor choices they make in life. And so that's what ended up happening. When I was 9 years old, I had an opportunity to make a bad choice, and I made the wrong choice. And I started trying drugs. And for me, I didn't do the drugs because I was interested in doing drugs. I did the drugs because I wanted to belong to a group. You see, so I sold myself short to belong to a group. I wanted to belong to the group more than I wanted to do what was right. And what ended up happening is that created a pattern in my life. And I continued to abuse drugs for over 15 years. And it led me to some of the most degrading places that you can go to in the Western world. By the time I was in grade 6, I remember sitting in grade 6, this was only 2 years after my father had passed away, and I looked at the clock and it said 3:20, and I just didn't want to go home. I didn't want to go home, because home wasn't a happy place. Each year in Canada, over 35,000 young people end up experiencing youth homelessness. They end up couch surfing first, and then it can lead to more chronic homelessness. Homelessness isn't something that just happens. You don't just leave home and all of a sudden you're on the street on a piece of cardboard. It's a process of deterioration. In smaller communities, we don't see as much of the chronic homelessness. You don't see somebody sitting on a piece of cardboard in front of the beer store today. But we have young people who are very, very much at risk. We have young people at risk in the community. We have young people at risk inside the high schools. You know, I was in St. Thomas earlier this year, and I met a young lady who was 17 years old. And she said, "Well, I don't really understand how you become homeless." And I said, "Well, let me ask you a question. Have you ever had a fight with your parents?" And she says, "Well, I'm 17, so yeah." I think she said, "Duh." I said, "So imagine you have a fight with your parents, and the door slams and it doesn't open again. That's how easy youth homelessness can happen, and oftentimes it does. We know that in this province, 60% of young people that end up couch surfing or experiencing street involvement or homelessness or not being in their home is due to family conflict. Right? We also know that there's a high incidence of mental health that leads to street involvement. We know that addiction can lead to street involvement. We know that early childhood trauma can lead to youth homelessness. We know that early child abuse can lead to youth homelessness. Now, all 5 of those things that I just mentioned are some of the top leaders or antecedents or root causes of why we have homelessness. And none of those are anything that a young person puts their arm in the air and says, "I would like that." Because it wasn't a lifestyle choice. It happened to be the roll of the dice. At 15 years old, I was angry. I couldn't get along with my stepfather. I didn't respect him. He wasn't a nice man. He said black, I said white. And we were constantly at each other's throats, until finally at 15, that door slammed for me and it didn't open again. And at 15 years old, I didn't have the skills to take care of myself. At 15 years old, I wasn't ready for the world. I said to that 17-year-old down in St. Thomas, I said, at 17, are you prepared right now to go out into the world and live your life and pay your own rent and wash your own clothes and clean, and cook your own food and get a career? And she said, absolutely not, I'm not ready. And I said, I know, and neither are 35,000 other young people in this country that experience that every year. And when you're not ready and you're thrust out into a cold, hard world, a lot of dangerous things can happen really quickly. And that's what happened to me. At 15, I left home. At 16, I dropped out of school. See, the biggest things in most young people's lives are family and school. And so within an 18-month period, I lost both of those pillars in my life. And so I didn't have a lot of structure, and I was struggling to do simple things like, where am I going to sleep next week or today? Where am I going to get money for food? And so life began to be a bit of an existence. I continued to struggle with addiction. I have deep-rooted psychological problems and challenges from my early childhood, and those continued to compound, and they manifested themselves in my life through substance abuse and addiction and mental health episodes. By the time I was 19 years old, I left Barrie. I moved from Midland to Barrie, and I went out west. I thought a change of venue was what I needed. I needed a new town, a new city. I thought it was Midland's fault. I thought it was Barrie's fault. And so I took all those problems that were inside me, and I went out to Vancouver, into a big city. And again, I represent another statistic of how many young people end up leaving small communities and gravitating towards the larger communities. They did a street census where they gathered data about the people on the street about 10 years ago in Vancouver, and 82% of the people from the downtown east side weren't from there. And that's something that we want to try and avoid for young people, because there's somebody struggling and they're here in this community, in Orillia. We want to try and keep them here, keep them in their school, keep them connected to their sports groups, their faith groups, their peers, their mentors, their counselors, their family, their uncles, their grandma. Because when you remove all that stuff and you put a 15 or 16-year-old person inside a metro, big city, there's a lot of danger and predation and ugly things waiting for them, and that's what I found. In 1989, this was a picture of me. You could have seen me shuffling down the streets of Vancouver, pushing a shopping cart, collecting cans and bottles. I would have probably made you cringe a bit, or maybe even made you a little nervous. But inside me was a possibility the entire time. It's just that I couldn't access it on my own. Sometimes in life we get stuck. And sometimes we get stuck for a long time. And that was my case. I had all of this possibility inside me, but I needed a breakthrough. I needed some help. And fortunately for me, my story ends well because of two things: a compassionate police officer and a mom that wouldn't quit. I ended up right around Christmas time, 1989. I connected back with my mom, and my life was really bad. I was chronically sleeping under a bridge in East Vancouver, collecting cans and bottles. Life was really rough. And Mom offered me a ticket to come home and live with her in her basement in Midhurst. And so I took that opportunity, and I went back to Midhurst, but I continued to struggle with addiction and the mental health. Until one night I had a crisis. Now, the good news with having my mom in my life is she got me up off the street. So now I was indoors. I was regularly eating, showering, had clean clothes. Those needs were taken care of, but the emotional stuff I still had to work through. And my mom was not an addictions counselor or a mental health worker, so she didn't know what to do to help me with this substance abuse problems I was having. One night, I was very depressed, and I was suicidal. And my mom walked into the room, and what she saw frightened her a great deal. I had a weapon, and I told her that I no longer really had the will to live. So you can imagine a mother's reaction to that was, she was very afraid. And she left the room and she called the Ontario Provincial Police. And that call came into the communications center right here in Orillia, and dispatched that night from the Barrie detachment of the Ontario Provincial Police was Constable Scott McLeod. You know, when I was growing up, because of the lifestyle choices and poor decisions I made, I had a lot of negative interaction with police. And rightly so, I was misbehaving. I never saw the police as a friend or an ally or someone who was there to help me. That night kind of changed that. Too often we hear stories of what happens when the police get it wrong, but that night Constable Scott McLeod got it right, and he diffused a very, very dangerous situation, and that opened the door of possibility for me. I ended up going to a drug treatment center and then back to school. I stayed in contact with Scott, and I let him know his impact that he had on my life. I wrote him a letter when I had a year sober. I wrote him a letter when I had 5 years sober. I wrote him a letter when I graduated college with honors. I wrote him a letter the day my daughter was born. This past Christmas, Scott sat down for Christmas dinner with me and my family. There are no ordinary calls, and Scott certainly didn't set out to save my life or change the trajectory of my life, but he did so in that average call that night. It opened a doorway for me to go back to college, and I had these great teachers who began working with my possibility. See, I think that great coaches, great teachers, what they do is they help us see what we have inside of us. And then they encourage us to take action, to move our feet in the right direction. Too often in life what happens is we stop. We stop short because of fear. Right? If you ever procrastinate from doing something, that's just a 5-syllable word for fear. It's if we have the courage to push through those negative emotions, that's when we have those breakthroughs. That's when we find out things about ourselves that are really encouraging and exciting. For me, I needed a whole pile of people to find those possibilities. Teachers, my mom, that OPP police officer, Scotty. But I started to get my feet moving, and I started to do really well at college. And I always thought I was a dumb kid, until 4 years later, I walked across a stage like this at Loyalist College, and they called out my name. They said, Joe Roberts, Dean's List. I graduated college with a 3.94 GPA. I made the Dean's List. When I look back at my life, I am a community investment gone correct. The community that I live in and the people that serve that community were there to love and support me when I was not able to love and support myself. On several occasions in Vancouver, firefighters in the city of Vancouver are also paramedics. On many occasions, I had interactions with those first responders. I'm here today because of my mom and because of those stepping stones that allowed me to exit homelessness. 12 years after I entered into the recovery process, I was driving a big car to my office in downtown Vancouver, and I passed a young man. I lived in Vancouver, I moved back to Vancouver, and I passed this young man in the corner, and he was pushing a shopping cart. And I realized that my life had come full circle. As I looked out the window of my fancy German sports car, I saw this kid, and I couldn't help but think of me. In less than 12 years, I went from living on the streets of Vancouver to being on the cover of Canadian Business Magazine as a celebrated entrepreneur. Inside all of us is an unlimited, untapped possibility and potential. But sometimes we need help accessing that. And so when I looked at my story through a pragmatic lens, through an analytical lens, I saw that the exit out of homelessness worked. I had access to resources and housing. I had a mom, that OPP police officer. I got education, which led to a vocation, a full-time job, and a tax return. A very big tax return. And so that allowed me to sort of reintegrate back into community. But the bigger question I've had is, did I need to be there? Did I need to enter into that? And that's when I got excited and wanted to do something to pay it forward, to prevent other stories from mine like happening. And that's how we started the Push for Change. So really at the heart of the Push for Change, as as the mayor mentioned, is really this notion that we can change the system and how we address youth homelessness by first getting rid of the stigma. This notion that homeless people are bad. We need to hold behavior accountable, but we need to ask the question of how does that person end up there? And what can we do as a municipality? What can we do as a province? What can we do as family members? What can we do as young people to support social justice? What can we do as law enforcement? What can we do as first responders to support both the children who enter into crisis, kids that are actively homeless and couch-surfing, and prevent those that are heading that way? And in that context, we started to have a conversation on how can we push for change. We see a problem doing nothing but growing every single year. The problem of homelessness continues to get bigger. Just like the mayor talked about the sustainability of the investment we make in healthcare in this province. If we don't begin to work upstream to support those young people when they begin to show signs of crisis, we will continue to see people building into that emergency services sector and not escaping. We know that the recent numbers look like 235,000 people every year in Canada experience homelessness, and 20% of those are children between the ages of 13 and 24. So we said, well, what can we do to support a conversation on prevention? What can we do to support a conversation on supporting young people? What can we do to help curtail the adult homeless population by addressing some of the flow of young people into the emergency services sector? And my friend Sean and I were on an airplane ride, and I said, Sean, how do you raise awareness? How do you raise money? How do you go across and inspire the nation to have a possibility? See, the great thing about lived experience and the story of a guy living under a bridge pushing a shopping cart to becoming a leader in the business world is in there is hope. In there is the possibility of transformation. And in there is something that we can teach. That we are not stuck with the system that we have that may not be working. We can get better. We can reevaluate the way that we address it and change the face of it. You see, all great social justice movements started with an idea that was so different. When we say that we believe we can end youth homelessness as we know it today, we believe that in our hearts. That one day we will look back at this time and call it before as we enter in. But you have to have that possibility first, and you have to have that burning desire to create that possibility, and then have a parade across the country and invite people to join that possibility. And that's the notion that we had on that airplane ride. And my friend said to me, he said, Joe, when Canadians want to inspire people and they want to raise money and awareness, they run across the country. So why don't you run across Canada for youth homelessness? And I said, why don't you run across Canada? I didn't like the idea of running. But then he said, why don't you push a shopping cart? It's a symbol of chronic homelessness, the thing that you're trying to avoid for kids. And I said, I like that idea. So we started to push for change. When we began, it was only a dream. 517-day walk across the second widest country in the world, taking 9,000 days, walking through 10 provinces and visiting the 3 northern territories with over 400 community events. Today is day 255, and I've walked over 4,700 kilometers to get here to Orillia. We have a long way to go, and a lot has happened since we began. We just came from the general headquarters of the Ontario Provincial Police, where we had senior leadership. We had friends within the civilian part of the OPP. We had recruits and cadets. Basically, we had the entire Ontario Provincial Police, and we've had the entire Ontario Provincial Police since we've walked into this province. That in and of itself, if that's all we accomplished in the push for change, that is a massive, massive partnership. To be able to work with such an extraordinary organization to shift the view and the kind of conversation we're having about mental health and community safety and helping young people transition safely.
Inside me is a possibility.